Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more to reach the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Plus, with 1 billion members on LinkedIn, that means you'll have access to 130 million decision makers and 10 million C-level executives. That's a lot of millions of the right people. Get started today and see how you can reach the right buyers with LinkedIn's enhanced targeting tools. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Coming up on this episode of the Entrepreneurial You.
I am strongly of the mindset that everybody is creative in their own right, and it's just a matter of finding the places where you enjoy sort of flexing that creative muscle. I'm a huge advocate for the customer development process and the idea that your customers can help guide you in the direction that you need to go.
Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's the Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Heneka Watkis-Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
Hello, folks. Hello, my peak performers. Welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneurial You. This, of course, is a podcast that sparks inspiration and motivation for entrepreneurs by bringing you conversations with the industry leaders like Seth Godin, Lisa Nichols, Les Brown, you name it. We have had them here, and so many other wonderful, amazing guests who are making waves in the world. Of course, I'm your host, Heneka Watkis-Porter, and today we have something special lined up for this segment, including, of course, we have the trending now, the community connection. But let me talk about my guest today, because I know you're anxious to hear. So today we have a true innovator in the form of Danny Nathan, the founder of Apollo 21. Danny's mission is to revolutionize how companies think about innovation and product design. So from crafting technology products that customers crave to streamlining internal operations with bespoke software, Danny, of course, has come to share his insights on driving meaningful change, really, and just harnessing creativity, that innovation strategy and product design for competitive advantage. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And so I encourage you to prepare. Maybe, I know when we listen to podcasts, we often multitask, but if you can find some time to just sit aside and do nothing else, that's if you're not driving or something, right? So buckle up, because this episode is going to inspire you to be creative. Welcome, Danny Nathan. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome sauce. So, of course, I did mention that we're talking about harnessing creativity, innovation, strategy, and product design for competitive advantage. Before we get into that, however, I like to kick things off. So if you're new here, let me just tell you, I like to kick things off with a little icebreaker. And so we're going to ask Danny. Danny, if you could invent a gadget that does anything you want but has a ridiculous name, what would it be called and what would it do? So, yeah.
Ooh. All right. I never have enough time, so I'm going to go with creating something that will duplicate me so that I can do more. And I think I'm going to go with the me multiplier.
I like it. I like it. Just recently another guest, that was her response to in terms of, multiplying themselves because we don't seem to have enough hours in the day. And can I tell you, if we had more than 24 hours in the day, we absolutely would, expand that and complain that, oh, we need more hours in the day.
Yeah, and we'd probably get about the same amount done and still feel bad about it. And yes,
Exactly.
yes. That's why, though, I figure if there's two of me, then at least there's two people that are responsible for getting everything
Right.
done.
Just you don't carry all of that load on your shoulder, right?
Right.
All right. So Apollo 21 focuses on building technology products and bespoke software. I'm going to jump right into it. What inspired you to start this venture and what's the story behind the name?
The creation of Apollo 21 was kind of opportunistic. So I was serving as head of product for a startup in LA that was focused on video technology. About 2 years into our journey there, we took on outside funding from a family office. And one of the stipulations for that funding was that we would help their other portfolio companies with some of their technology needs. And so I spent the last year of my time at that company kind of leading a little SWAT team that was helping to evaluate operational issues, technology issues, things like that, and come up with and build solutions to those problems for our portfolio companies. And about a year into that, my founders and some folks from the family office tapped me on the shoulder and sort of said, you seem to enjoy this type of work. Do you want to go pursue it? Do you want to go do this? And so I took that opportunity, and that led to the creation of Apollo 21. As far as the naming goes, I've always been intrigued by sort of all things space and exploration and all of that. And so, obviously, space travel and the pursuit of putting a man on the moon was the kind of origination of the idea of the moonshot. And so, as I started thinking about what Apollo 21 does or would do at the time, the idea of moonshots and helping people reach their goals was very top of mind. And so I started doing some research on the Apollo program, and what I discovered was that the last scheduled Apollo mission was Apollo 20. And so 21 would have been next in line. We opened our doors in 2021. And so it just seemed to have a really nice alignment with both my interests and the idea of shooting for the moon and, all of that fun stuff. So that's where Apollo 21 came from.
Such an interesting story. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. I really love it. So let me ask you. I jumped right into the business question kind of thing. But as I see you, I'm sitting across from you, Danny, and I'm thinking to myself, what were you like as a young boy? Were you thinking about doing business on your own? Were you surrounded by entrepreneurs in your family? Just take us a little into that.
Sure. No, I'm a oddball latecomer to the world of entrepreneurialism. So as a kid, I was wholly invested in theater and outdoor sports. So I spent a lot of time on stage and a lot of time rock climbing and backpacking and climbing mountains and things like that. And it really wasn't until I kind of got started in my career and found myself very dissatisfied. I went to graduate school for advertising and started working on the creative side in the advertising industry, and realized very quickly that I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want to spend the rest of my days making ads that were screaming at people to buy things at inopportune times by interrupting their favorite TV shows and whatever. And so I kind of made it a personal mission to get out of that world, and found myself at an innovation consultancy where I was a very early team member and really had a beautiful opportunity to sort of take on as much as or more than I could chew. And, it was one of those places where I was amongst the first 10 hires, and it was an all hands on deck kind of situation. And I just found myself really thriving in that environment of everybody working together to get stuff done. And that role was really my first foray into the worlds of technology and entrepreneurialism, and really opened my eyes to what it meant to not only create something, but to create a business around it, and to think about the dynamics of how to create customer value while also creating value for a company that could sustain longevity. And that's where I caught the bug, and I've been focused on this world ever since.
So harnessing the creativity and to create something that customers want. What does that look like? Because guess what? I grew up thinking, when person will say to others, "Oh, you're so creative." I grew up thinking that creativity, it was like a special gift, and only some people can be creative, and there's no creative bone inside of me. So let's talk about harnessing creativity to produce products that customers actually need.
So creativity is a really interesting kind of conversation topic. And it's funny that you kind of bring it up in that direction. My wife and I were actually just having a very similar conversation, but I am strongly of the mindset that everybody is creative in their own right. And it's just a matter of finding the places where you enjoy sort of flexing that creative muscle. And one of the best examples that I can give, I was in graduate school for advertising. And so I was immersed daily in the world of creativity. I was in the creative program. As I said, I'd come out of, decades of studying theater, which of course is pretty widely considered a creative pursuit. And I was living with a good friend of mine who I had known since I think middle school, who was a hardware engineer at Dell. And he similarly claimed that he was not creative at all, didn't have a creative bone in his body either. And yet, from the outside, I'm watching him literally design motherboards for Dell computers and looking at the design specs that he was creating and the level of thought and care and consideration that went into how do we pack all of this functionality into a board that's this big, and how can we make it 20% smaller, or whatever it was that he was working on at the time. And what immediately struck me was that he was perhaps one of the most creative people I had ever seen, but he was applying it in a manner and in an environment that people didn't think of as creative. And so he had been trained not to think of what he was doing as creative. And in my opinion, he couldn't have been more wrong, because what he was doing was creating new things out of thin air to figure out how to make Dell computers work better for their customers and to keep up with the rate of change in technology. And so to me, that's the perfect example of everybody being creative, whether you think you are or not, and just sort of figuring out the place that you get excited about applying that creativity and taking the time to think about how to do things differently in a way that benefits the person that's going to be sitting on the other side of whatever that thing is once it goes to market.
Sure. And because if you look into the word itself, right? Creative, it comes from the word create,
Hmm.
and all it's like, but for true, it was like if you're not doing things like painting and fashion designing and stuff like and writing songs and poetry, So I'm glad we actually discussed that. Now, I want to know a little more about when you're thinking about creativity, right? What's the difference between creating products for external customers versus that, internal software solution that you'd create? What really are the different considerations that you need to think about?
I could answer that in two different ways.
Mhm.
One, I could tell you that they're dramatically different because the use case is different and the purpose and the business need is all different. But at the same time, I could argue that they are largely the same pursuit. You have a customer, if you will, an end user, whoever's going to be, as I said, sitting on the other side of that thing, using it on a day to day basis. And they have a job to be done, something that they're trying to accomplish. And when push comes to shove, whether you're creating a product for internal use or a product for, external sale, the reality is that you are looking at that job to be done, figuring out a unique, new, interesting way to solve that problem and provide the solution to the need that the customer has or the end user has, and then packaging that up in a way that aligns to business needs, business goals, and supports the growth of the entity, the company, whatever it is that is surrounding that thing, so that you can create that ultimately kind of symbiotic relationship between company and customer so that both gain value out of that relationship. And so I guess the short version of what I'm getting at is, while there's a lot of difference in terms of the end user and the application, there's not a ton of difference in the approach and the process and the thought that goes into how do we consider the needs and then how do we go about solving for those needs.
Mhm. So, Dan, your work involves, aiding companies with their innovation strategies. So, what are some of those common misconceptions that businesses have, and individuals, of course, who lead businesses have about innovation?
Innovation's a really tough one. It's a lot like creativity in that it has a lot of different meanings to different people when you throw it out
Mhm.
there. And so One of the things that we focus on is helping companies define what they mean by innovation and then also sort of relate that to how the broader world views the ideals of innovation. And when we really start to dig into what does it mean to innovate, a lot of that comes down to what are the goals of the company and how do they align to the needs for the future. And so as you start digging into the ideas of innovation, you'll probably hear things thrown around like sustaining versus disruptive innovation. And as you get into it and as you think about what innovation means to different companies at different stages of their life cycle, a lot of what we work with our clients to figure out is helping them understand and identify where they are in their own life cycle so that we can help define what innovation means to them in a manner that will be impactful. And so to give you an example, a highly established company that has a large team, a lot of processes defined, and is really looking to focus on growth of shareholder value over time and some of the metrics that a lot of companies lean on as they get into growth and maturity stages, there's a really good chance that they're leaning into sustaining innovation. So they're looking at how can they move up market within the target market that they have so that they can drive greater profit margin and really begin to build a deeper moat between their customers and customers that are perhaps down market from, their product offering, so on and so forth. Whereas if you look at disruptive innovation and the pursuit of creating something new, then often what you're looking at is how do you take existing technologies and apply them in a new way to attract a new audience whose needs perhaps are lesser than the upmarket audience that you might otherwise focus on. So when you really start to dig into the examples of kind of sustaining versus disruptive innovation, what you discover is that disruptive innovation, contrary to what the name would sort of portray, often is the application of older or lower end technology to new use cases and new target markets to give them access to something that they didn't have before. And so that line of thinking is, generally kind of at the start of where we begin an engagement with a customer so that we can figure out, as I said, what does innovation mean to them? What are their business goals? Who's their customer set? And what can we create that is additive to that sort of mix of ingredients so that it aligns to the company's future goals?
So, based on your experience, Danny, what are some of the key factors that determines customer company success when they are committing to innovation and committing to an innovation strategy?
One of the biggest things is their willingness to talk to their customers. So I'm a huge advocate for the customer development process and the idea that your customers can help guide you in the direction that you need to go. And there's a couple of kind of pat answers to what I've just said. One being, oh, well, we talk to our customers, we send an NPS survey, and we send them a survey every time they interact with a customer service agent, for example. And yes, that is talking to your customer, but it is really not what I'm describing. There's only so much that you're going to learn from somebody giving you a 1 to 10 rating on an NPS survey or saying, yes, Jane over there really helped solve my problem. Whereas what I'm describing is helping, inform the research and the discovery of gaps in your current product offering to determine where your customer needs lie, what their proclivity is for engaging with new technologies, whether that's a need for that particular customer segment or whether that's a nice to have. And then layering into that the experience and expertise of the people within the organization so that you're not just taking customer feedback at face value. And, one of the best examples of this is the old sort of faster horse mentality. A lot of people say, well, if I go talk to my customers, they're going to tell me they want a faster horse. They're going to tell me they want a faster phone, whatever it is. And, my answer to that is, well, that's why you're the product person, or, that's why you're the innovation person. It is your job to talk to the customer and to discover what they want, but it is also your job to understand that when a customer tells you they want a faster horse, what they're actually telling you is I want to get from A to B faster. And so it is your job as an innovator to determine that a quote faster horse might not have legs, it might have wheels, and it might run on gasoline instead of hay, but it is still solving the customer problem of I want to get from A to B faster. And so there's a level of interpretation that I think comes from experience and knowledge that is still required in the mix, even if you're going to go ask your customers what they want from you.
Mm. Interesting, interesting. Thanks for that. So I'm thinking here about creativity and innovation, right? What are the differences and what are the similarities between the two?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, I think that creativity kind of comes down to the application of the thought process. So,
Mhm.
as I've described, if you're an innovator, it is your job to determine where the areas of opportunity are for your business, your product, your customer, etc. But it's in the interpretation that you get the opportunity to apply the creativity. So, in that moment where somebody says to you, I want a faster horse, it is your opportunity to be creative about interpreting what a faster horse means. And so to me, it's creativity and imagination and the ability to look beyond what we have directly in front of us that help people get from the moment of how do I make a literal horse faster to how do I solve the problem of getting from A to B faster? And does that have to look like a horse with four legs? Or could it look like something entirely different? And so the other example of this that product people use all the time, especially when they're touting the idea of an MVP, is I'm looking for transportation, and so okay, you get the little chart with a skateboard, a bicycle, a motorcycle, and a car contrasted against four wheels attached to a frame, four wheels with a frame and an engine, and then a car. And so you get to that sort of idea of, well, if what I'm looking to solve for is, going places, then do the steps of that solution have to be building a car, or could the steps be incremental towards figuring out how to help people get from A to B, period, and then elaborating and iterating on that into a more unique solution that eventually might look like a car.
Well, I used to think that in order to be creative, you have to work up something, you step away for some time, and it's a whole process, right? But sometimes it can really be a simple thing as taking a break so that your mind can flow, right? A little. But tell us, how do we harness the creativity within us? What are some of the things that you do as part of your company Apollo 21? What are some of the things that you do to ensure that you remain creative?
There's a couple of answers that come to mind here. One, you're kind of leading into the idea of creative process, which I think is a very individual thing. For me, it involves a lot of research so that I feel like I have a very clear understanding of the world in which I'm trying to be creative, whether that's for myself or for a client. So, that might be a clear understanding of what a client's internal processes look like today, or a clear understanding of how customers are using their product. And then once I've sort of immersed myself in that world, I think you're right. The idea of stepping away for a moment, the idea of, lightning hits in the shower or when you're out on a dog walk or whatever it is, it's allowing yourself to become immersed so that you know that the knowledge is there, and then separating yourself from it enough that your subconscious can sort of chew on it without the barriers of the immediate knee-jerk reaction of, oh well, that wouldn't work because blah blah blah, or I don't know, maybe we can't accomplish that. Like, forget all of that and push it by the wayside for the moment and just let the creativity sort of bubble up and percolate from inside till you get to the point where you go, oh, interesting. I've never seen that solved this way, but I can see how that would be beneficial given the situation that we have described. And so, to answer the second part of your question, the way that we sort of foster that here at Apollo 21 is one, making sure that people have the space to sort of do both the research and the thinking. And so part of that comes down to how we operate as an organization. We are what's called a ROW, or results oriented work environment. And so that means that for us, we're not holding a brainstorm that's a 2 hour long pressure driven work session. We're going, okay, by the time we get out of this 2 hour work session, we have to have the lightning bolt idea. I'd rather give people the foundational knowledge that they need and then let them go away so that they have the opportunity for that lightning bolt to strike somewhere else while they're, going about their everyday lives. And then the other thing that we do a lot of is frankly questioning one another. Hey, what if we did this? Oh, well, how would that work? How is that unique? How would that come to life in a way that serves both the customer need and the business need. And so again, we've built a culture around an understanding that when we are questioning one another, it's not an antagonistic effort. We're not out to get one another or to prove one another wrong, but rather we are trying to force ourselves to expand our thinking and to consider all of the possibilities that may not have crossed our mind in the moment that the lightning struck, so that we can sort of pressure test those ideas and give the opportunity for other people to weigh in, get those moments of, oh, yes, and those are the moments where I think creativity really shines, and where especially collaborative creativity has an opportunity to kind of rear its head.
Interesting, and a good point at which we pause to do our community connection. This is a segment where I invite you, our community, to share your reviews, your questions, your feedback, whatever it is that you want to talk to us about, so that we know that you are there and engaging with us. This week, I'm sharing a podcast review, and it comes from author M from the Philippines. I enjoy listening to the show because it provides great value. Heneka is a great host, and you learn a lot from her guests. Thank you so much, author M, for sending in this review, doing the podcast review. I appreciate you. Please do share it with somebody else so that they can benefit as well. And now I come back to Danny Nathan to provide your final thoughts around the subject of creativity and innovation. And then I'm going to ask you, how might our listeners or peak performers connect with you? All right, so go ahead, Danny.
Oh boy, put me on the spot. Final thoughts. I think that when it comes to creativity and innovation, people put a lot of pressure on themselves to be creative, to be innovative. And as soon as you do that, you are limiting yourself to fulfilling the idea of creativity or innovation through the lens of what somebody else thinks that might mean. And so I think my last thought would be, give yourself the freedom to figure out where you feel creative and celebrate that. Figure out how you can spend more time in those moments so that you learn to feel creative and innovative regardless of what other people think, and it will help bolster both your self-confidence and your ability to do so, and also the results that come out of those efforts. So those are kind of my thoughts on the matter.
All right, thank you. And how might our community connect with you?
Best way to find us is on our website, which is Apollo21, the number two, number one.io. We are active on all of the requisite social medias. And then if you want to keep up with us on a weekly basis in your inbox, we have a newsletter that is called Innovate, Disrupt, or Die. And that is available at innovatedisruptordie.com.
All right. And on that note, I take great pleasure, Danny, in saying to you, thank you so much for joining us today on the Entrepreneurial You with your wisdom. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great chat.
Awesome. And now let's move into trending now. What's trending? According to a recent McKinsey report, companies that prioritize innovation are 2.3 times more likely to experience high growth rates compared to their competitors. This finding highlights the critical importance of fostering a culture of innovation within organizations. By investing in new ideas, processes, and technologies, companies not only enhance their competitive advantage, but they also position themselves for sustainable success in today's dynamic market. As industries continue to evolve, the ability to innovate becomes essential for adapting to changing consumer demands and staying ahead of the curve. And that's what's trending now. Again, I want to thank my guest today, Danny Nathan, for sharing insights into his journey, how he came up with his company's name, all of that, and just leaving a whole lot of gems with us, right? We are truly grateful. So, of course, we know that in order for us to actually get more traction, we need you to just leave a rate and review, so that others can find it. We love that. I'm Heneka Watkis-Porter, and this is the Entrepreneurial You. Of course, we close with our affirmation, right? So I want you to affirm with me. I embrace change, cultivate creativity, and watch as innovation leads me to extraordinary possibilities. When I lead with authenticity, I sparkle a ripple effect of positive change. I believe in my voice. It's more powerful than I realize. Again, This has been the Entrepreneurial You, and I'm Heneka Watkis-Porter. Do take care. And again, thanks to our sponsors. Well, thanks to our sponsors, the Jamaica Stock Exchange and HenekeWatkis-Porter.com. Have to big them up, right? Thank you so much. Have yourself a wonderful rest of day and night, whenever it is that you're listening to this podcast.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.